How to make a universe. This is not an easy thing, so we'll divide it into parts. This is part 1. G'day, I'm Ray Tone from New Zealand, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to make a universe. One of the things that people have always wondered about is where did the universe come from and how does it work? The problem is, in modern times we've got wrapped up in this crazy idea of a Big Bang Theory, and every time something new is discovered they have to invent a new add-on to it, such as dark matter or inflation or dark energy or acceleration and various other things going on to try and make it work. This is much more complicated than the epicycles attributed to poor old Ptolemy. This is Ptolemy, who worked out the motion of the planet pretty well. In modern times he's been criticised for his epicycles, but his system is far better than those used in modern cosmology, where every time something goes wrong they have to invent a new way to make it work. Democritus was the man who invented atoms. In some ways they were a good idea, solving the problem of knives cutting up things without limit, but in fact it did also cause a problem of thinking that there really couldn't be anything smaller. In modern times we keep making smaller things, but we can't really have knives for chopping them into those sizes. Although there were some clever thinkers back in Greek times, we also get the origin of all of the problems in thinking about how the universe works from then too. Democritus had this wonderful idea of atoms, but when we get later on to Maxwell, the idea of atoms was so embedded in the thinking that it wasn't possible for people to realise that atoms might actually be a wave structure and nothing to do with solid little particles. And although later this was discovered to be so, a wrong turning was made at that time and people didn't recognise that matter was just a form of electromagnetism and that it could be explained by the existing laws that were discovered by Maxwell. James Clerk Maxwell took all of the equations that people were working out and the ideas on electricity and magnetism and combined them together in one system that showed how an ether could vibrate and explain all the laws of electricity and magnetism, and that the result of this would also be to explain the behaviour of light and to predict things such as radio waves. A clever man who really got close to the formula for the universe. Maxwell's equations explain the behaviour of electricity and magnetism and how these waves can be propagated in an ether. One of the problems was they couldn't work out how matter could fit in with this, because the equations of electromagnetism seemed to be saying that the universe was made of this very strong thing of ether with a tensile strength like 1,000,000 times that of steel in order to propagate waves at the speed of light, but at the same time the Earth could pass through this ether. The answer was the Earth didn't pass through the ether in the way that a knife passes through butter. It passes through the ether in the way that sound passes through a block of steel. The stuff that we consider as substantial has to be seen as just waves in the ether, just like the electricity and magnetism waves. Matter is made of these same sort of waves. William Clifford was a brilliant mathematician. He understood from Maxwell's equations that there had to be solutions for matter, and he worked out that matter must be standing waves of electromagnetism. Unfortunately, he died before these ideas caught on, and the idea got lost. Hendrik Lorentz and also Fitzgerald understood that if the electron was what held matter together and it had an electrical basis, then perhaps the equations of Maxwell would explain the changes in size of matter, which would mean there would be a null result in the Michelson-Morley experiment. This idea didn't carry on because of the way people interpreted relativity, unfortunately. In the late 1800s, physics made a wrong turn because it was discovered that the Michelson-Morley experiment, which was supposed to show the motion of the Earth through the ether, got a null result. Lorentz and Fitzgerald had some explanations for this because they began to understand at a rudimentary level that matter was actually electromagnetic wave based, or at least electrons were. However, the idea didn't catch on, and instead people interpreted relativity as meaning there was no ether. This was a bad move. Later on, when de Broglie came along, and also with Schrödinger before that, it began to be understood that matter was actually made of waves. And although physics has come to this conclusion now that there is a wave nature to matter, they didn't go back and revise the mistakes made at that time when relativity was first invented, when the idea of the ether was abandoned by many physicists. Actually, many of the famous physicists always believed in ether. I think they understood it, but in modern times it's regarded as a bit of a laugh. I have made other videos which you may watch about the wave structure of matter, but once it's understood that matter is made of real waves, that these waves are exactly the same waves that travel as electromagnetism, it's just those standing waves. They're concentric spheres of standing waves coming outwards and going inwards at each point where there's an atom, where there's a particle. So particles are standing waves of electromagnetism, so they have basically the same laws of physics operating on them as Maxwell's equations. It's just necessary to recognize that near the center of a particle, a very strong non-linearity created by the intense energy does create some extra factors. So to summarize, although physics has made a lot of advances, there's been the occasional wrong turn. These wrong turns have meant that there's some seed of impure thinking that's been retained and that is an obstacle to further progress. But what I'm going to show is that if we took a much simpler view, just taking Maxwell's equations essentially as they are, but recognizing that something extra goes on at the center of particles where the energy is more intense, so the speed of light will vary, then we can arrive at an understanding of how the entire universe works just based on this simple principle. In part 2 I will show some real wave structures to show how this sort of thing might go on.
I developed a way of looking at this through the intricate order that's based really on quantum theory. And the way it works is to consider that there's a wave. You may think of this wave coming from outside, from the whole universe, which converges to a point and then diverges again. Now, it links everything. It means that everything is internally related to everything. Now,
Of course, the real world's a bit more complicated than this little circular dish. We don't know whether it has a circular boundary or not. That doesn't really matter. But the thing is, it is three-dimensional, not two-dimensional. So the wave structures are likely to be rather more complicated than this. However, we can understand that in a universe full of vibration, that centers can exist which have particle-like properties, which will have different phases that can account for the different charges of different particles, but that these are standing waves, and that the energy coming into each one and the energy going out of each one is the same energy that passes through the center as the concentric waves converge on the spot and then go out, and that the arrangement of all of these different ones is supporting the phases of the waves of all other particles. Every particle in the universe is being constantly recreated by the energy of all other particles. This is something which is not really understood by physicists, and I think it's a very important point. If we want to understand how the universe works, we do need to say that nature actually works like this.
Animations is Gabriel Lafreniere, and he showed here how a wave is made from the incoming part, a standing wave, plus the outgoing part. These two components together make a standing wave, which you can see here. So it appears to just stand in space, but it's actually composed of the inwards and outwards waves. Of course, the outwards wave is just the inwards wave after it has passed through the center and comes out again of the spherical wave descending on a point. So this type of wave has the correct properties that we need to explain particles. If the particle is in motion, then the point at which it's converging has to be moving, so the the waves are converging on a point and coming out from a point in opposite ways. So when you get the standing wave, you get this suddenly a strange effect where the wave that we saw before has superimposed on it these other bands of alternating phase. And these are de Broglie waves. All these calculations, as we had all managed to derive these calculations that show the de Broglie waves from this understanding of standing waves, but in this animation Gabriel has made it very clear what's actually going on, and the understanding of all of these things. It's clear that these are real waves. Real waves are happening that explain the nature of matter as being standing waves.
People think our particles are spherical wave structures consisting of an outgoing wave combined with an in wave. Mathematicians are fairly happy with this because these are the only two possible solutions of the equations. So that part is okay. Now the center of this structure behaves just like a particle. The only problem is not many people know it yet, because not many people have investigated it.
look for love, no time for tears. Wasted water's all that is, and it don't make no flowers grow.
And that is why I say that this course of lectures is to give everyone the knowledge of God's creative processes, the means he employs, the balance which he demands, the separateness of father-motherhood into fathers and mothers, which must interchange in balance in order to unite and as one. And that applies to every corpuscle of the body as well as it applies to every individual entity as a whole.
The University of Science and Philosophy will soon be releasing never-before-heard lectures by Dr. Walter Russell. These lectures were discovered in our extensive archives less than 1 year ago. We have finished mastering Dr. Russell's lectures of his 1952 summer seminar. 14 lectures, 28 hours in total, on a USB drive available on September 9th, 2017. Visit our store at philosophy.org.
As a result of accumulated power, accumulated power of decay.
Universe, 9 octaves. Gases begin the first octave, very dense metals, and the 9th octave, like the plutonium, being the last of the natural octave, or last of the natural elements. So you have very few rings with gases. You start at hydrogen, 1 electron or whatever. They call it an electron. There's no such thing, but it's more of a ring. And that ring I kind of like to use these words. There's a protonic force of inward motion or compression, a neutronic force, which is a point of reversal, and then an electronic force, which is the point of expansion back to stillness. So stillness compresses to a point and then expands in a reversal of direction back out to stillness. There's a protonic force of inward motion or compression, a neutronic force, which is a point of reversal, and then an electronic force, which is the point of expansion back to stillness. So stillness compresses to a point and then expands in a reversal of direction back out to stillness. And the way you can look at that too in nature is the breath. You breathe in, you start at 0, you breathe in, you stop at 0. Reverse direction and exhale out to do it again. So Walter's primary law is balance. If you need 2 words, rhythmic balance. If you need 3 words, rhythmic balanced interchange. And basically what that is a series of repetitions that repeats eternally. So you have removed the need for the Big Bang. And this is basically a mind wave universe that rotates on the still white magnetic light. Anywhere you look, the center of any object is a point of gravity. Gravity is not an inward pulling force. In Russell science, it is stillness, which divides into a north and south shaft upon which motion then rotates. So wherever there is a center of gravity, there's motion surrounding it, and that center of gravity can be likened to God. It means the same thing pretty much. Gravity and God are one in that sense.
There's nothing in the nature but waves of motion. Waves multiply in the direction of their amplitude and they divide on the way down. back to silence of the zero from which it came. That's life and death.
All you have to do is look up into the heavens and look at a spiral galaxy, and you'll see the exact same formation. In fact, every nucleal center is not exactly a solid mass. There's only one instance in the wave in which that's actually true, and that's at carbon, or what we call the wave amplitude. It's where if you imagine a sinusoid, it's where the crest and the trough is located. At that position, you've accumulated maximum potential by compression from the outside to the inside. And so it isn't a nuclear mass in the way that they teach it, where all elements have a nuclear mass full of protons and neutrons of a certain weight with orbital electrons around it. What Russell is really endeavoring to teach us is that there's a wave structure behind all so-called particles or particulate. A particle mass is really only an accumulation of waves in a smaller volume or smaller region of space. And so it based on all of our test equipment and what we have available to us to our limited senses, it appears to be a particle mass. And that's what led to this whole explosion of trying to describe everything using particles. But in reality, it's the underlying mechanics behind everything is waves. Everything has a wave structure because everything is created and it lives. It has a life and death cycle, and that is fundamentally based upon the structure of the wave.
Yeah.
Knowledge is solely an attribute of the mind. Sensation is solely an attribute of the body. Mind is static light, the one and only power source of this universe. Thus thinking, you see what man calls life in a new light. You see it as the manner in which God manifests the idea of light and eternal life by dividing his one idea into countless pairs of many seemingly separate ideas, for that is what vibrating light waves are. These waves of light emerge from their fulcrum zeros and disappear into them in endless repetitions forever and ever. The wave is an extension of heaven to earth and back again. The wave is a projection from the spiritual universe of rest to a resting point in the physical universe, and back again to the spiritual universe for renewal of power to repeat the journey. Another way of saying it is that the wave is an emergence from the static condition of rest through the dynamic condition of motion to the static condition and back again, or that it is an extension of cause through effect and back again through effect to cause. Between every pulsation of movement, there is a period of stillness, which divides every compression-expansion sequence. You can knowingly say that the power expressed in motion is not really in the motion, but is in the stillness which divides motion. If that is true, life itself, which is presumed to be motion, must have its source in eternal rest. If death is presumed to be non-motion, and life is dependent upon it to express life, the only possible conclusion is that life is two ways, both of which have their source in rest.
The time will come in the unfoldment of man when his inner sensory perception will equal his outer sensory perception. When that time comes, he will know that motion only seems but has no existence. Present-day man's senses do not permit him to perceive the simultaneously voiding motion which cancels out the one they do see. In our new Science of Tomorrow teachings are these words for a new law for tomorrow, which read, every action-reaction in nature is voided as it occurs, is recorded as it's voided, and is repeated as it is recorded. The time has come when unfolding man should recognize this fact and place knowledge and power in the Creator of universal bodies and not in the bodies.
Be still and know.
The hardest lesson that man must learn is that whatever he does to others, he is doing to himself. Natural law is inexorable. No man or nation can escape it.
People become what they think, and it is in the nature of pupils to think what they are taught, and that which they think, they become. Who among the greatest of the world's university-trained scientific scholars can tell how the dynamic universe of motion emerges from the static condition of rest, or how God constructs matter? Those secrets lie behind the curtain of invisibility, which the materially minded, sense-limited intellectuals cannot penetrate. No such curtain exists for the cosmic-minded illuminate. When you begin to think cosmically, you will advance rapidly if your desire is keen, but from the very day you begin, you will note increasingly greater power in your work and still a greater transformation of your personality.
Your capacity for joy and happiness may be measured by your capacity for grief and suffering. All of the knowledge in the world should not dehumanize you. Your knowledge will, however, balance all opposite emotions and thus enrich you for having experienced them, while ignorance will breed fears, worries, superstitions, and other unnatural emotions, which act as a terrible burden to your progress. Knowledge of universal law will give you courage to transform the greatest defeat which ever threatened you into your greatest achievement.
Sunshine in nature would be a calamity without shadow. Grief, suffering, loneliness, and kindred emotions are as purposeful in the divine drama of life as joyfulness, happiness, and like emotions are purposeful. And being purposeful, they are good. When any of our loved ones die, we rightly feel a great sense of grief and loneliness. All the knowledge in the world will not assuage that expression of emotion. This is as it should be.
every single thing that exists, and I'm not kidding, everything that exists springs out of this womb, this football-like shape. It sounds like a wild, improbable, crazy thing to say, but it's absolutely true.
So the Vesica Pisces is considered the womb of the universe. All shapes are born from this duality, this division of the one.
In 1993, the then Minister for Science, William Watergrave, offered a bottle of vintage champagne to anyone who could explain Higgs boson in simple terms.
Nature has not two different ways of creating anything. Created only by waves. There's nothing in the nature but waves of motion. Waves multiply in the direction of their amplitude, and they divide on the way down. Back to silence of the zero from which it came. That's life and death.
No matter how great your knowledge of the unreality of death may be, no matter how strongly you may live in the spiritual world, you must not forget that you have a physical body, which manifests spiritual idea, and that you live in both the divided and undivided universe of cause and effect. To have so much knowledge of the undivided universe that it leaves you cold to the emotions of the divided universe is to hold yourself aloof from the play and renders you purposeless.
To live life, one needs to be strong in knowledge rather than in body. Strength of body is like to having a fine tool to do better work with, but no tool can produce work by itself, and a weak mind cannot order a tool to do masterly work. The most important contributions to the power and happiness in the world of man are knowledge and strength of character. Give of yourself, and you will discover all the power in all the universe is yours to give. Life is an eons-long journey to search for happiness. Happiness in man is an emotion that springs from love. To find happiness, man must find love. The journey of life is for the finding of love.
God is love. When you find God, you find love. When you find God, you find the kingdom of heaven within yourself, and all things else are added unto you.
Therefore, go forward with courage, knowing that in all the world there is only one, the universal one. light of your very being is love, and your very body is founded upon the light of love. The light of love is the only force in all this universe.
We're upsetting the whole of the organic structure of the decaying mile or two of the earth which gives us our life. In your periodic chart, carbon appears 3.5 octaves from Alpha Non and 5.5 octaves from Omega Non. Why not 4.5 octaves from Alpha Non, as would be midway or in the center? You counted by the gases, the inert gases, rather than by the element itself. The 9 octaves appear from one to the other, and the beginning is the end. And if you count them by the inert gases, you found that neon is the central one, and therefore on either side. Carbon is on one side of that, and silicon on the other. Is artesian water the same as unborn water? No. Artesian water is water that has filled the galleries and caves and crevices in the rock everywhere from rainwater. That is water that's evaporated from the ocean or from the earth, goes into the heavens and comes back again and seeps through the underground rivers. It's great underground rivers, just as there are great overground rivers. And that is the water that we call the rain cycle, the rainwater cycle. It rises and falls and seeps in through and comes out again. That's rainwater cycle of either artesian or other wells that are nearer the surface is the water that is lessening because of the taking of the tree growth down and of the destruction of the oxygen in the atmosphere that makes it necessary to pull more and more and more oxygen from the earth for its necessity, and not succeeded in doing, raises the temperature of the earth. The unborn water is water that is being released from the crystal structures like the granite and the silicon. The artesian water is that which has already come out and circulating in the atmosphere to the clouds and back again. Please explain briefly what you mean by the term extending the fulcrum. In my understanding, the fulcrum is the stand that supports the seesaw. Do you mean by extension to make it higher, or do you mean to make the seesaw longer? I mean to make the extension, the fulcrum of the seesaw. The fulcrum is there in nature always. The moment you express a desire to do something, to make an action, then you extend from the fulcrum both ways. You make the seesaw. That's what it is to extend it, the amount of energy that you have. If you do not extend the fulcrum, you seemingly extend it. You seemingly divide its power. Because children on either end of the seesaw can express the power of motion. But that is all they do, express the power of motion. And that power of motion they express is the power borrowed from the stillness of the fulcrum at the center. I do not always have to like to say it's a seeming extension, because the universe is only seeming. Perhaps if I use the word, it's a thought extension. And it is. It's an imagined extension. In your thinking, you imagine. And you cannot imagine objectively without creating motion objectively in your imagining. And so it is in the thinking process of nature there seems to be an extension or division which takes power or borrows seeming power without borrowing it but seeming to. Before I say it, the extension of power is like a person pulling away from the fulcrum with an elastic band that stretches and strains and makes it harder and harder and harder to pull away from it. But on the opposite side, there's equal pulling away to balance that pulling. But the power is in the fulcrum, not in the... For instance, if you stood out on the prairie and pulled at a rope, you have no difficulty pulling at that rope. It will not pull you back. But you hit the post there, and the post does not move. And you take an elastic band and you hitch it to it, and you stretch away from it. You find it pulling back. Therefore, you've created two conditions at the same time. You've created condition of extension and condition of expansion, and of reflection. That's the action and reaction nature. From the zero you have extended in every direction, because you cannot extend this direction from the fulcrum without extending in the opposite direction to balance it. The two conditions of decentration and concentration of mental thinking have been established in what we call an electric current. If you let that elastic go, it will go back to where it started from and disappear in the fulcrum. That fulcrum is the zero. That which we borrowed from the fulcrum is a multiplication of that zero plus and minus. One balancing the other, one offsetting the other. You borrowed 50 from there by your pulling, 50 plus. On the opposite side of that is a 50 minus. 50 minus and 50 plus total together a zero. Nothing in nature ever exceeds zero. It seems to. And so we have multiplying and divided universe into pairs of opposite conditions of compression and expansion, two opposite pressures which make it possible to run our engines and do all the things we have and run the engine of our heartbeat and so forth. But the fulcrum of every extension, every seesaw motion, the fulcrum never moves. That is its zero, and the elastic bands will pull together and disappear into the light from which it came, into the zero light from which it came, to divide itself into two lights that will illumine the bodies that have extended from it. Those lights illumine and warm and heat and cool the bodies that are extended from it to make a universe like that. To make a universe that fits the imaginings of your mind. When it retracts back to that, there's no more want to want the bodies, no more light to light the bodies. The imagined universe disappears insofar as that one desire is concerned. Life has appeared and disappeared in death, and it will again reappear. The extension of the fulcrum and its multiplication to a point of equal potential to that which is borrowed from the fulcrum is right, with all of the effects that is created by so doing, the effects of warmth and heat and cool and growth and decay and moisture that make up this universe. And when that elastic band pulls that back into the fulcrum, there's an absolute disappearance of all of it. The whole universe can't disappear at once because it isn't created that way. But that one pulsation will disappear. And the pulsations which appear by extending the fulcrum and retracting, those pulsations begin with an incredible speed, with an incredibly small duration. Frequencies of millions and millions of extensions and retractions. The seesaw extending and retracting so that its frequency is 186,000 miles a second. The frequency is growing larger, duration, accumulating time until the frequencies are so slow they'll give you 1 in 50 years of a tree, perhaps. The ant, the elephant, the sun, the solar system. Multiplied time, multiplied frequency, multiplied abilities to accumulate these frequencies and wind them up to retard time for the sake of multiplying power. That's the lever principle. That's the fulcrum and lever principle. Shorten the lever, you lose time and you gain power. A man, by shortening the lever sufficiently and getting on the long end of it, can lift tons. Well, without that lever, he could only lift 100, 150 pounds with the lever and fulcrum of his own body. He's limited to that, but with the, as Archimedes said, give me a fulcrum and a lever long enough and I could move the universe. It's true. Does light spring spontaneously from nature? A college professor said it did not. There is nothing spontaneous in nature, in the sense that it is used. Everything in nature is planned. Everything in nature is the result of a desire to become, a desire to express in motion the idea of mind. Nothing spontaneous happens in your kitchen. In motion, the idea of mind. Nothing spontaneous happens in your kitchen after the dinner dishes have gone there. A desire to reassort them is followed by action. And the fulfillment of your desire takes place by action. A word spontaneous is used often in the relation of combustion, spontaneous combustion. If you leave a pile of refuse out somewhere and some kindlings in it, or even some decaying vegetation and earth that will burst into flame. That's not spontaneous combustion. That's the result of accumulated power, accumulated power of decay.
A proper way to connect it to the electric universe of motion would be to term it the magnetic electric universe, meaning the spiritual physical universe, or the mind thinking universe, in the sense that the zero magnetic universe is the creator, and the motion universe is creation.
When man is fully aware of the fact that he eternally lives in the Creator's invisible magnetic light as one with it, and merely manifests life by action in the electric universe, he will then know that when action ceases, it merely ceases without affecting him, even as sound ceases without affecting him who made the sound.
This is the construct.
The Creator is the invisible, motionless, sexless, undivided, and unconditioned white magnetic light of omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent mind.
The word magnetism connotes a physical attribute. A proper way to connect it to the electric universe of motion would be to term it the magnetic electric universe, meaning the spiritual physical universe, or the mind thinking universe, in the sense that the zero magnetic universe is the creator, and the motion universe is creation.
When man is fully aware of the fact that he eternally lives in the Creator's invisible magnetic light as one with it, and merely manifests life by action in the electric universe, he will then know that when action ceases, it merely ceases without affecting him, even as sound ceases without affecting him who made the sound.
This is the omniscient universe of eternal mind qualities, from which transient electric qualities emerge to simulate the qualities of the Creator's magnetic light of mind, which are knowledge, idea, energy, life, soul, love, truth, beauty, rhythm, balance, law, silence, rest, and stillness.
The magnetic light is sexless, for it is in equilibrium. Its electric division into pairs creates the dual sex condition, which we know as male and female.
The Creator gives of itself to all the universe in an eternity of endless re-giving. The Creator's universe re-gives of itself to the Creator in an eternity of endless giving. That which the Creator gives is love. That which is re-given is love. That is the divine story of creation. It is a story of cause and effect in the giving and re-giving of love. It is the one story of the Creator's knowing, expressed by thinking, illumined by the light of imagining.
The time has come when unfolding intelligence in man should tell him that the divine spark of inspiration and the silent voice which speaks to him from within is the magnetic light of mind and the source of his energy.
The Creator, who is the knower, is non-dimensional. The Creator's thinking is two-dimensional. The Creator's imaginings are three-dimensional.
Creation consists of the invisible magnetic universe of mind, which man calls space, and the visible universe of motion, which man calls matter and substance.
The Creator's still magnetic light is omnipresent and omnipotent. It is in and through everything throughout eternity. The Creator's magnetic omniscience is expressed in the perfection of its electric creation.
While it is true that you and I and all of the other atoms in the universe are mostly empty space, it is also true that empty space isn't truly empty. And in fact, it is these vacuum fluctuations which are essential for our existence.